Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Matchbook Horse Racing Podcast. 7 races to preview for you, and huge fields. Oh no, some jumps racing for us to go through. Haydock's not bad, to be fair. Ascot's a little light in a couple of races, but we've got quality. And as John Bond proved in the week, you don't need really competitive action to put in an excellent performance or to enjoy what we're seeing. He was very good. We've got some solid betting opinions for you as well coming up. Whether we do in the Betfair Chase or not remains to be seen. We'll get to that very shortly. That is the feature race this weekend. Let me remind you to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It makes it easier to watch each and every podcast that goes up there. Everything we do on the YouTube channel is available as a podcast, and the World Cup's coming up, so that's well worth getting stuck into, the World Cup pod that's out there. Head to insights.matchbook.com for all of our podcast best bets across all sports. We did very well last week. Lots of winners. Dom was on flying form, Matt Toombs as well. I think they were both all over Garlour for the Paddy Power Chase. Our producer, Dan Hussey, was there, and that's why, particularly on the Sunday, there's not any documentation of all the winners we had, because, in his words, he was far too hungover. But, that's what you want to do when you get at Cheltenham, isn't it? Dan Overall's with us. Were you at Cheltenham last week, Dan?
I was, yeah, on the Saturday. I didn't bump into Dan, actually. I think, as you say, he was too busy in the Guinness Village for basically the entire day, which is a shame. But, yeah, it was a good day, to be fair.
He doesn't watch the racing. He just goes for the booze. But some people are, so that's what Cheltenham's becoming. So there we are. Jonesy, you were with him.
Big screen.
Exactly.
Yeah, he didn't buy me a drink, and I don't blame him. It's £7.50 a pop, but
there we go. Got that one in there. Yeah, quite right. Charlie, how are you? Should we look forward? How's things, Charlie?
Things are good, Tom. Yeah, I'm looking. I mean, like you say, the field size are a bit small, but I'm looking forward to some quality action at the weekend. And I also went to Cheltenham on Friday, but I avoided Dan Hussey at all measures.
Quite right too. And Dan avoided the Sunday altogether because he didn't realise that they raced on the Sunday when he bought the tickets. Good stuff. Right, we put him away enough. We're going to be nice to him for now. Let's start with the Betfair Chase, the big one. So this is obviously a hugely exciting renewal because the current holder of the Betfair Chase and the current Gold Cup winner is lining up. But whether or not he's a backable proposition for you remains to be seen. So A Plus Tard is in there currently at 1.66. Protector at 4.0. Bristol the Mai is 8.5. Eldorado Allen 26 and 34 for Frodon. So A Plus Tard took on 6 horses last year. 4 of them were rated mid-160s. He's taking on the 164 rated Protectorat, the 162 rated Eldorado Allen, the 164 rated Frodon, and the 158 rated Bristol the May. He's rated a few pounds lower than when he was this time last year. So, Dan, I'll come back to you. No bet, I think, officially. Not tempted by that about A Plus Tard?
No, and I think, honestly, it's a good thing the rain's come, because otherwise we would probably talk about this race for about 30 seconds and then move on, because we all know A Plus Tard is the best horse in this race by some distance. Obviously, the unknown we're currently dealing with here is that he's going to encounter proper Haydock, soft, heavy ground, or it looks like he's going to, for the first time. Obviously, it was good to soft. It was relatively quick ground last year when he bolted up in the race. And that's just the unknown. Like, he has won on soft to heavy before. Like, he's won on heavy in France. Whether that's proper heavy, it's always a bit up to debate. His novice handicap win at the festival a couple of years ago came on soft ground, but this could be an entirely different proposition. Like, ultimately, I think he's more likely to handle it than not. But when you've got an odds-on shot, I don't really like having such a lingering doubt about such an important element when considering whether to have a bet or not. So odds on, I'm happy to leave him alone. And yeah, it's just not a race for me to bet in. But I think A Plus Tard is the most likely winner, as the market suggests.
So I'll just pick up off that. I feel like at that price, if there's no heavy in the going description, I think that's a really fair price. I'd be happy to put him up as a bet and probably pop him in with a few others on the day, because I think it's value. As I said, last year he took on 4 horses rated in the mid-160s. off the top of my head, I was looking back and thinking, well, he bolted up last year, but crap renewal, and then I looked at it, and there's every argument that it was a better renewal last year. So, Protectorat's having his first go of the year. He was well put in his place at Cheltenham by Aplutard, before he made a mistake late on. Aplutard's rated over a stone superior. So I wouldn't want to be back in Protectorat at 4.0. But like Dan said, it's just the ground, which is a slight niggle if there was heavy in the going description. So I make him a bet as long as there's no heavy in the going description. Jonesy, what's your view on the race? I mean, it's like absolute nap landed
every time.
Every time. It's like I can't even describe it. It's like, how do you, if only we could bet on this, Steve, if you'd be 101.
That'd be the banker.
Yeah. I mean, we actually can't hear you at all, Steve. We still can't.
Mute myself. I didn't mute myself. Mute myself. Who the muted me? That's Dan Hussey again. That's Dan Hussey again. Well, if I did mute myself, I've forgotten about it, and that's an even more worrying sign, because I'm probably going to see now. My view on this race is much the same as everyone else's. Aplutard will probably win, and he'll probably win very easily, very similar to the last year. I'm not massively keen on Protectorat, and he seems to be the main danger. He's had another breathing operation. I know that Dan Skelton said the softer the heavier. Well, if he's got breathing issues, which he clearly has, I don't think soft ground is or bottomless Haydock ground is going to do him any favours. And he's got that one great piece of form where he just bolted up despite pulling hard in soft ground at Aintree. But I think it just fell apart. It was the likes of Native River and Tiger Roll and horses that had their day, and others that probably never will. So I was a bit suspicious of it. It ran well in the Gold Cup. But if I was forced to have a bet, it would be Bristol to May without the favourite Aplutard, because although he pulled up in this race last year, he's won it 3 times, hasn't he? And he loves the track and he loves the ground if it goes heavy. The only problem is last year he was probably taken on up front, and he's going to be doing that again by Frodon, although it might not do that with Frodon.
Yeah, same. I think they will.
Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, if that was the case, 4 runners, then I'd probably Bristol to May second. But yeah, even if Frodon does run, there's got to be a case saying that they won't go so aggressive. But
if they do, it's not going to make a huge difference to the market if they pull the outsider out. So then I guess from what you're saying, and I know Charlie fancies Bristol, then as a betting proposition, which you can pick up with Charlie. But is that because of how the race is likely to be run? Is that because of his course record?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, look, I think Aplutard will win. But I mean, if I was going to have a bit of an interest in the race, I might just have a couple of quid on Bristol de Mai. He loves Haydock. He loves bad ground. And yeah, I thought, like Dan said, that there's every chance with because I think it will be, and I love how Dan calls it proper heavy. I love when people are describing ground that that there's proper good ground or proper heavy ground, as in when we think it's going to be really, really tested. And I think there's every chance it will be. Bristol de Mai loves it, and yeah, if Frodon comes out, I think there's every chance he get an easy lead. And just for a bit of a play in the race, I'd have a couple of quid on him. But I think, like we all do, it's a pretty uncompetitive renewal, and Aplutard will probably win and win easy.
Okay, and I take it because when we have these, particularly over the jumps, and we have the current, say, Gold Cup favourite lining up, etc. Anti-post wise, I take it nobody is interested with regards to that race at Cheltenham with this horse. No, nobody has a strong view there. No, good, fine.
No.
Too early. All right, fine. Couple of shouts then for Aplutard, but whether he's a betting proposition, I don't know. As I say, I think he is if there's no heavy in the going description, and some positivity for Bristol de Mai. Okay, the 150 at Haydock has Hitman in there. This is his preferred option, isn't it? That's as we understand it.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah.
So Hitman is in there a very similar sort of price, 1.6. Manila Drama is 6.0. Earn River 7.0, as is Itchy Feet. Itchy Feet in a graduation chase as a Grade 1 winner at the top level. You can pick up there, Charlie. You like Itchy Feet?
I mean, I like Itchy Feet because I'm kind of not liking any of the others. Like I think he was second in this race last year, the Brave Man's Game. He does go on bad ground. It suits him well. He's had a wind operation. And the interesting angle I thought was Sean Bowen on him for the first time. I think he's like, there's no doubt he thinks about the game, this horse. And he could just be the sort of horse that might be, well, invigorated. He might either love it or hate it with Sean Bowen's positivity and sort of aggressive riding style on his back. And I just thought you could pick holes in a lot of the others. Earn River, we haven't seen this time round. Manila Drama, I mean, just ran okay behind Beauport at Carlisle. And I'm just not a big Hitman fan. And whether he wants 2-5 in very attritional conditions, I'm not completely convinced by. So the fact that Itchy Feet is the outside of the field, I make him a bet in this. And to be honest, that's something I probably never thought I would say.
Fair enough. Itchy Feet for you. Manila Drama, Dan, before Steve and I make the same case.
Yeah, so I thought he shaped well in that Colin Parker to a point. Like, he went from the front, he had Bear Gills tracking him, and they both basically ran very similar races. Manila Drama just seemed to blow up after the second last. He put in 2 very tired leaps there, which is understandable given he's a fairly fresh horse. He still isn't overly exposed at 2.5 miles, and just it's generally his nature. And Bear Gills, likewise, who was tracking him, pretty much ran the same race, but after the last he tired, and then we had the stayers come out of nowhere to close, and he was giving away a lot of weight that day. I just like the fact that he has actually had a run. As we're saying, I think he's going to benefit from that quite enormously. But we know he handles soft, heavy ground. He's done it at Haydock before when winning a Grade 2 here last season. He was second in a Supreme trial a couple of seasons ago at the track. Look, he's not as talented as Hitman, but I think he'll handle conditions better than most. That run under his belt, I think, is a big plus. And I think, like all of us, we're pretty keen to take on Hitman if he runs here. Obviously, he's got the option of diverting to Ascot. I just think Manila Drama, who might put in a good shift from the front, and you kind of know what you're going to get with him.
Yeah, I'd be Peter's punts agrees. Manila Drama. I think Hitman's got to be a take-on job. And Steve, I was quite impressed with what Earn River did last year. Now I know he came unstuck when he went up in grade, but he was largely pretty progressive. I think he wants to go this way, and yeah, Nick Kent did a good job with him. So you can make a stronger case, hopefully.
Yeah, well, his last run at Sandown was obviously the wrong way round, so you can put a line through that, like you said. He was still in there in the Grade 1 at Aintree at the Grand National meeting, the novice chase, 2.5 mile novice chase, when he fell. I think that was halfway round, down the back the final time. And before that, he was very progressive. And had he been trained by anyone else, a bigger name, then he would be a lot shorter price. But Nick Kent's a very good trainer. And he trains for Earn River's owners, who owned God's Own, who won a huge amount of good races. I think he won 4 Grade 1s. And Earn River, it's certainly heading that direction to be in a decent graded race. And this graduation chase suits him ideally. And you've got to, if you're on a day like this when there's no runners and you're backing Hitman at odds on, best of luck to you. Because if you can't find a better horse than that to back at that, if he wins, he'll do it on the bridle. And he's got good form. And that's the thing. That's why he's so short. He's got good form behind the likes like Grenetin and Protectorat. But it's always Faka Duderi. It's always behind horses, not in front of them. And that's what he is. He's so vulnerable to anything that has a bit of bottle. And Earn River, I think it's worth chance. He's the outsider of the field, wasn't he, when I looked? So it should never be that. He's got a lot of potential, this horse. He seems to cope with soft ground all right. And all those wins next to his name is a hell of a lot better than all those seconds and thirds next to Hitman's name.
Yeah, he's joined outside of the field with itchy feet. So there you are. We've got the put up or the lot up against Hitman, and I think Hitman's going up as a low in a few places as well. So hopefully he doesn't win. That's the 150 done. The 205 at Ascot is up next. We've got another odds-on shot here, 1.6 shot in the form of Long Presse. I still think this is an intriguing little race. Now, much depends on where Hitman goes, of course, because we think he's going to go to Haydock. St. Calvados is 9.0. Do Your Job 21, 34 for Cool Cody. Do Your Job is... I think also engaged elsewhere.
Tomorrow.
On Friday,
tomorrow.
yeah.
That's tomorrow, okay. Do we know a preference there, chaps, or not?
I presume he'll just have the option of running tomorrow, and then, I would imagine they'll pull him out for Saturday.
Yeah. Okay, so he might not definitely go here. Head to the betting for that race is declared for tomorrow. All right, Charlie, I'll come straight back to you then. I think most of us are in agreement with Long Presse. Whether or not we actually make him a better 1.6, do you?
I mean, I actually don't think he's a bad price at that. I mean, it's just exciting to see him back, as in he had a faultless season last year, bar at Aintree, when you probably argue it was just one run too many. And he hopefully is going to make up into a big contender in open company. And I'm really excited to see him start back off. And I'd be disappointed if he can't put the likes of St. Calvados away and this field and probably beat them well as well. So it's more for me a watching brief, and I'm looking forward to seeing him back. I think maybe Dan said the same. There's an option if Hitman did run and the prices remain the same. I might double him up with Constitution Hill would be the sort of angle I'd be looking at.
Yeah, if Hitman runs here and the price holds up.
Yeah.
I mean, currently looking at it, he's a more attractive 1.6 shot than Hitman is at Haydock, but if and when Hitman comes out, I don't know. I think he's very solid if you were looking at putting him into multiples, etc. But again, if Hitman doesn't show up, then he's going to be a lot shorter, albeit he's not going to have much to beat. So, Dan, what do you think?
Well, yeah, as you say, there's a distinct possibility this becomes a free-runner race, and it's Long Presse, St. Calvados, and Cool Cody. I mean, Cool Cody's going to be in for the shock of his life when he realises he's at Cheltenham. I think the last 11 runs have been at Cheltenham. All of a sudden he's turning up an Ascot in a free-runner race. He won't know what's going on. He'll think he's back at home schooling. But yeah, look, it
might help him, Dan, because he tends to jump this way, Cool Cody, doesn't he? He tends to actually jump right. He might be like, oh, hang on, this is all right. But I doubt it.
No, well, you never know what you're going to get, God bless him. But he's it's an interesting that he's in here. And I think that they'll pick up some prize money with him regardless if he jumps around. Look, it would be disappointing if Long Presse doesn't win this. Look, I think rather strangely, Aintree sticks in people's minds more than what he did before last season. But going into Cheltenham, I thought he was the best novice chaser we had in Britain. Like coming out of it, I still thought the same. I know people think he may be dependent on soft ground. Moving forward, I don't necessarily think that's true. I just think he was probably over the top, and also Venetia's horses were just not running well at all. Towards that Aintree time, they'd all left their form well behind them that day. Look, I mean, Venetia's form is also a bit of a concern, I think, but this weekend is, I mean, look, she's got plenty of runners around. And we know it's the old cliche of the ground's getting soft, she's got to come back into form. But I wouldn't be necessarily bullish on them kind of rebounding. But I think there will be some more positive signs this weekend. And look, St. Calvados, we know he's got some very smart form to his name. Paul Nicholls has been making some interesting claims about seemingly having him right and knowing him a bit better than previously. And look, you wouldn't be without a shout. It's just very interesting that he's now been bought by David Maxwell. So I'm not really sure where the long-term campaigning with him is necessarily going to take him. But if Long Presse can't beat, it's strange, was.
I thought Maxie looked in need of the run last weekend when he was riding, if I'm honest.
It was his first run for a while, wasn't it? And then he was going to have a runner in the handicap hurdle, which I was really keen on, and then got withdrawn. So probably
I think the jockey blew up, so he withdrew.
Good decision, yeah. I'd love to see that on the non-runner form.
Our producer Daniel Hussey, apologies if David Maxwell's watching this or listening. Our producer says I'd have gotten fourth on him, which is quite a claim. I don't think you'd have passed. You wouldn't have passed the breath test, mate. So the sounds of things. So there you are.
Yeah, Dan and I think Dan and I were both keen on Simply the Bets last weekend. So yeah.
He's always injured as well. He's always injured, Dan. He plays that soft game in Ireland, and he's always injured.
Yeah, he played. What's it? Curling, it's called. He's going to hate that on so many levels, of course, because it's not called that, and that's not even the right game. So the interesting thing about David Maxwell is the horse is going to go for the King George. Well, that's still the plan to go for the King George. But David Maxwell is on holiday with his kids, and so he won't ride him in the King George if that is indeed where he lands up. So there you are. That's a side point. I've forgotten where we've got to with this race. Does anybody else want to say anything about it? Steve, did you want to say anything about it or not?
I just thought it was a very nice starting point for L'Homme Pressé, unfortunately. You'd love to see this being far more competitive, but Cool Cody will go from the front, you'd imagine, because that's what he does, and give L'Homme Pressé a lovely lead. And what he did over fences last year was very impressive. And the fact that he was one of the very, very few Cheltenham Festival winners for Britain was another feather in his cap. But with regards to this race, it just looks like an open goal and a lovely starting point for him on what I'd imagine that they'll be hoping to end up at the Gold Cup.
I'll just the only other thing I'd say is when he won at the track last year, I thought he looked like he wanted to go left-handed, and then he looked really good at Cheltenham with his 2 runs there. So I think he'll win. I just have this slight. I don't know, I have this slight concern about him going this way. Dan, that
was only his second start over fences, which I think is a big thing. And then he obviously went to Sandown and kicked aside a load of lesser horses. So personally, if you're remembering his run at Ascot last year when he admittedly bolted up, I wouldn't let that worry you.
Dan, just to come back one, if you think he's the best novice chaser from Britain last year, do you see him as a Gold Cup betting proposition or not?
Probably not, because I don't think he's the class of A Plus Tard or even potentially Galopin Des Champs. Like, he would be a decent each way option, but it's concerning that they're only ever talking about the Gold Cup. And if you're thinking like anti-post betting proposition, what's he going to do in the interim to shorten between now and then? Like, he wins here. I mean, he might shorten just out of the sake of it, but we're not going to learn anything new about him. And then I literally have no idea how they're going to campaign afterwards. So it might be a case of if we get soft ground on the day, then he might be interesting each way angle. But for now, I'd be happy to leave him alone for the Gold Cup.
Trials day in January, will he? Probably, if he wins here, maybe.
Yeah, could go that way. Like, they just seem so coy about running him. Like, it's every time they mention him, it's Gold Cup, Gold Cup, Gold Cup. Even like in interviews today, like, oh, he's going to go there, have a nice blow, will come on plenty for it. So it just seems a bit off to me. But there you go.
All right, let's move on to the 225 at Haydock. I haven't got prices up. Sorry, 5.5 Mai Tai as is Run for Oscar. Good risk at all. 8.0, 9.0 Complete Unknown. Get a Tonic 10.0. Bigger prices the rest. Right, nice competitive race this. You lot are all going for the same horse. Steve Jones, make the case.
Let me just get the race up first. You've surprised me now. It's
honestly, it is lovely.
One thing I will start with is Sam Thomas is got his horses very forward.
Welcome to the geriatric podcast.
It's cold. Sorry. It's cold, and I'm not working very.
Is that what did you go to put the heater on when you got out of the chair then just now?
Well, I was quite aware that I looked a bit like Darth Vader, so I went to put another light on against my better judgment, and it hasn't made much difference, I must say. But it's good risk at all is the horse I fancy, and Sam Thomas has got his horses really in good form, and that's a good thing. And this horse has already won this season at Carlisle, and that was over 2.5 on heavy ground. He does love soft ground, so if it rains and rains and rains, he will be one of the ones that goes through it best. And he won at Ascot last season very impressively on soft ground. That was again over 2 miles 3. And there's a case for saying that he did run a bit keen through the race at Carlisle and stepping up to 3 miles, although I think it will suit him. you could say that maybe that's a bit of a worry. But if you look through the winners this race, you'd think that they'd be real sloggers. But a lot of them have won this race, stepping up to 3 miles for the first time. Dan Levant last year was stepping up from 2 miles. And so that doesn't worry me too much. It's got quite a history of good horses winning this race. Paisley Park, probably the best of them, or undoubtedly the best of them a few years ago. And Good Risk At All is that kind of young horse with a lot of upside, rather than what you'd imagine at Haydock you might get is horses with huge amounts of stamina just slogging out. But it takes a bit more to win a race like this. And if you go back to his bumper form, Good Risk At All, he beat good horses like I Like to Move It, who won the Greatwood last weekend, Gelino Bello, who's a Grade 1 winner. And he's carried that on through his hurdles career. He's taking on John Bon last year, and since switching to handicaps, he's won his last 2. So I think he's a really exciting horse who is going to like the conditions and hopefully see it out. Haydock's quite a sharpish track, despite the fact that it gets very testing. So I just think against some of the others, because Might Eye is another horse stepping up in distance. And I think Good Risk At All is more likely to see the distance out than Might Eye, who had good form again behind Constitution Hill, John Bond, 3 Stripe Life. But first time out, going up to 3 miles on testing ground, and he does race. He travels really well, that horse. And I think if it comes to the pair of them, I'd rather be on Good Risk At All.
Charlie?
Yeah, I mean, I think 5 and 6 year olds have won 7 of the last 10 of these. So he's the right sort of profile, improving young horse on the way up. And I think on grounds worse than soft, I think he's 3 wins in a second. So we know that he's going to handle conditions really well. And he's had that run already. And I think £6 rise was fair enough. And yeah, there's scope to believe that, Carlisle's a very, very stiff 2.5, that this 3 mile on a flat track, as Steve said, quite a sharp track now, much as the conditions are going to be demanding, should suit him well. So, yeah, and Sam Thomas, he's had plenty of Saturday winners over the last few weekends.
Yeah, he's flying along, isn't he? Dan?
Yeah, not too much else to add. So I'm really keen on Good Risk At All. Maybe just worth noting that 7 of the last 8 winners of this race had some form of run under their belts earlier in the season, just to get them right. I would quite like Might Eye if it was better ground, because I just see him maybe struggling to get home in these conditions on his first run. But to be honest, Good Risk At All, to me, I think he's got the perfect profile for the race, and it would not surprise me at all if he were to follow in the footsteps of the likes of Paisley Park and Sam Spitter and go on to Long Walk after this, because I just think he is a different animal entirely on soft to heavy ground, and in a division that normally lacks for depth. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he won this and then went on to Ascot and was very competitive there as well.
Matchbook exchanges will let any horse follow the Paisley Park route here. Well, Dan's answered that question. I'm selecting Might Eye. I share the concerns in the ground about stamina. One on heavy ground, but the Aintree race, he kept on okay, but I wouldn't say he was necessarily screaming out for a step up and trip. But I do think he's the best treated horse in the race. Harry Fry last year, I think was pretty frustrated he hadn't run him in the boys' race at the festival, and that was because he was going to, but he had a setback, and he's looking at his mark now, 1:42, probably thinking, well, it's not bad, but it could have been a heck of a lot better off 1:35. Third to John Bond, second to 3 Stripe Life, second to Constitution Hill, albeit a well-beaten one, but he's bumped into some good horses. I thought on Good Risk At All really interested me, and then when I looked at the prices, they were similar earlier on. He's a good bit shorter now, but he was so far ahead of that horse Aintree, and he's going to be getting £1. I just thought that that made Might Eye the selection. I really like both of them, but I'm with Might Eye. So hopefully between us, we've got it covered. The Chapter Exchange says, how on earth is Run for Oscar 9-2 favourite carrying 12 stone? It's 5.5. Carrying 12 stone, having never won over 3 miles. I hadn't really thought about that. I guess, Jonesy, it's the Burns factor, right? That's it, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. And I wouldn't be so worried about the weight. Weight is overrated in a kind of a factor, you're much better off in taking on lesser horses carrying more weight than less weight taking on better horses. So that doesn't worry me. But he won the Cesarovic over 2-2. So he's certainly worth another stab at 3 miles, and he won over 2-6. It's the ground that would worry me the most. He's a good ground horse, in my opinion, and he's not going to get that whatever happens at Haydock. So I agree with the sentiment, but not particularly the workings.
Okay, let's move on. Alex says, if Mai Tai gets beat, is Galopin de Champs a hype horse? Where's Mai Tai's and Galopin de Champs form? Am I missing that?
Does he mean 3 Stripe Life?
Yes, I think he probably does he? Sorry, Alex, I'm being a fool, aren't I? I'm going to come back to that, Alex. Let's move on to the 240 at Ascot. Constitution Hill, 1.29. Need to get above Nicky Henderson. Brewing Up a Storm, 6.5. Goshen. 10.0 for Pleasure and Utrecht are the big outsiders. Okay. Who's got a bet here? Does anybody actually have a bet? Just hands up. No, fine. I do, which is Goshen without the favourite, because I think he should be closer to Brewing Up a Storm at the prices. He's won his last 2 starts over hurdles. He wants to go this way around. Like, I sort of think he's a really fair price for all. And I know it's mad saying it. 10.0, and then take Constitution Hill out of it. I think he should be second favourite, Goshen.
I always feel when you laugh at your own bet, there's probably a warning in there.
I like that. Yeah.
He's a better horse than Brewing Up a Storm. Sorry, Matchbook
he's
Ambassador.
Also a lunatic.
Will For Pleasure not harry the hell out of him as well?
Can you harry Goshen? I don't know if you can. I think
For Pleasure might be the horse
like,
though.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm going to back him without the favourite for a bit of fun.
It's the right price to be backing him at, because rather than 11-8 on his chase debut last time, which and it's after timing, but Jesus, you look at that and you think, who on earth is betting that?
No, we laid it. He was a double lay on the podcast. Gosh, we got that right.
Certainly not.
Took on with every horse in the race other than him, I think.
Yeah, that's actually also true. Although we would have got it right had the Nichols thing stood up. Anyway, all right. So I'm going to back Goshen without the favourite. We're obviously going to know a bit more about the champion hurdle market after the Morgiana on Sunday, depending on who Willie declares for that. But Constitution Hill, I take it, is a no bet for people. Although Charlie, you might double up with Long Presse if Hitman stands his ground in that race. Dan, you think the same?
Which is unlikely, but yeah, I think that if that happened, then I think just under 2.0 for the double, it's not a bad bet or something like that.
Okay, Dan, do you want to add anything else?
Not much else needs to be said. I just hope we see Constitution Hill do what we hope he can do and just look as impressive as he did in Supreme last year.
What makes it a good return? Do you know what I mean? How far does he need to win, or what does he need to do against these?
I guess you'd probably be hoping for a similar situation to the Supreme. You get the 2 tearaway front runners come through. They turn around the bend. They're at it. He's still cruising by, just goes through and wins on the bridle. I mean, that's what you want from a horse that short as well, right? Like, he needs to be doing that really to justify it. But
Alex has been back in touch. He did mean 3 Stripe Life. That's fine. I don't think Galopin de Champs is a hype horse. I think he's a monster. Steve?
Can I just say the thing with Constitution Hill? He's 11-8. 2.25, 2.3. I don't know. Whatever that price is on an exchange. My maths, it doesn't. And
2.38. I think. Do you mean for the champion hurdle?
2.38 for the champion hurdle. And Honeysuckle, who's won 2 of them, is 5. That's not right in my opinion.
But that was going to be my question, Steve. You read my mind, and that's why we're so in sync. That's why it's such a pleasure working with you, Steve.
That's why when we bat together, we're in such tune with each other that I don't have to drive 5-hour round trip and get run out every time.
Try and run a bit faster. Constitution Hill 2.38, Honeysuckle 6.0. Dan, which one are you backing now? Go.
Constitution Hill, up and coming horse versus
Charlie.
an aging mare.
Charlie.
Honeysuckle at the prices. As in everyone wants to underestimate her, and she gets that handy allowance, and she just wins.
She's never been beaten, and she's won 2 champion hurdles and a Supreme one. The amount of Supreme winners that, and bearing in mind, Constitution Hill is a very impressive one, but the amount of Supreme winners that, this is the next great thing over hurdles. I go back to Flown. I remember Flown winning for Nicky Henderson, the Supreme. In a faster time than whatever won the champion hurdle that year, Morley Street or Cry Bences or something. This is the next. Barely won another race. So, seen it all before. No way can this horse be 11-8.
This is great.
What was your favourite hype horse?
2.37. Thank you.
What was your favourite hype horse?
Oh God! I'd have to think about that. Favourite hype horse. I'm going to come back to you on that later in the show.
This is really, really good TV. This is great. I'm going to narrow it down to favourite Supreme hype horse. Okay, who is it? How's he moving? He didn't touch anything. This is just insane. He doesn't.
I'm going to come back to you on this.
Please do.
Because I can't remember what won the Supreme Novices.
Okay. Constitution Hill 2.38, Honeysuckle 5.0. I'm with Honeysuckle as well at those prices currently. So it's 3-1, I'm afraid. There you are. And we're definitely going to clip Dan Overall saying Honeysuckle's an aging mare, because Twitter will absolutely lynch. Mate, you're dead. You're done.
Twitter's on the decline anyway since Elon brought it over. So, I mean, I might as well just delete it now. We'll all move over to the Facebook. We'll do streams over there.
All right. So that's our view on the Coral Hurdle, sort of, but mainly our view on the Champion Hurdle. There we are. 3:15. We've got Steve's favourite horse, and you absolute shitbag, Jones. You haven't even selected him. I can't believe it. It's not okay, I don't think. Okay, so Edward Stone heads the betting for this 3:15. Let me get the prices up. That would help, wouldn't it? Edward Stone is 4.0. Boot Hill is 5.5. So Scottish 6.5, as is Time White. Frero Bamboo is 9.5. Double figures thereafter. So, Steve, why? Why not Edward Stone?
Well, it's all price dependent, and his first time of the season. I was surprised that Alan King was saying that they're going to go up in trip with this horse. Or possibly up in trip after this. I think that he would have a decent chance in the champion chase. I'm not convinced by those at the top of the betting. I know people, Energumene and the rest, and Shishkin. I think of the pair, Shishkin definitely wants to go up in distance, and there's question marks over him. I think Energumene won by default last year. So Edwardstone, the record of Arkle winners next year, I'd be better off backing him at 12-1 or something is for the 13 rather for the champion chase than tomorrow, even though I think he's Saturday, because he's got a really good chance. But first time back against race fit horses might be the time when Edwardstone's vulnerable. And I thought Frero Bamboo ran really well behind Time White on his comeback run when they were first and second over this track and trip a few weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. And the softer ground will help Frero Bamboo. It might not go soft enough, but I thought there was times last season, including when he ran in the Grand Annual, which he finished third in, I think, to Global Citizen. Yeah, third, where he didn't travel really all that great, but he travelled much, much better this time. And I think he might just be an improved horse, Frero Bamboo. And if that's the case in a 9-runner race, it's a good place bet race. So I'm on win small, place big on Frero Bamboo.
Okay. I Does somebody agree with you? No. We've got a couple of Edwardstone shouts. Dan Overall, you can make the case for me.
Yeah. To be honest, this is an extremely tricky race, I thought. Obviously, you've got the 1, 2, 3 and the 7th from the race in October reopposing. You've got Emmett Mullins' horse in there, who's only had 2 chase starts in his life, one boat with plenty in hand over 2.5. Boot Hill is a horse who's promised so much, but again, only 2 chase starts into a race of this nature would put me off. And the more I looked at it, the more I just kept coming back to Edwardstone as the most solid one. I think the class angle in these races often pays dividends. It worked with Frodon a couple of weeks ago. And I just have a feeling that a lot of the horses he's coming up against here are pretty much handicapped to what they are capable of. Now, Edwardstone might be the same. Like, is he a 170 horse? Probably not, but I think he's the one who's most likely to run a very solid race. Could he come on for it? Perhaps. But I think the test it's going to present is going to play perfectly to his strengths. He's a very smooth traveller, as you know, and he's a very strong stay over 2 miles. And I think with a couple of front runners in here, this will be a test of stamina, especially turning in on ground that is probably going to be on the soft side of good to soft. I just thought the more I looked through this race, I could pick holes in one or pretty much every horse in here. But it would take a hell of a performance to win off 161, but I think he's capable of it. And yeah, I just thought he was a solid option.
Yeah, I completely agree with all that. I feel like he's actually a sort of horse that a decent pace in a decent sized field handicaps, he's really going to suit him.
Over hurdles, that was his bag, wasn't it? Really,
yeah.
Like he was a top handicap hurdler before he went chasing. So I think the bigger the field, the stronger the pace, the better for him.
Yeah, I think he's a really fair price, 4.0. Yeah, happy days. Edwardstone would be a decent bet for me. Charlie.
Yeah, I mean, I think after Saturday, it could well prove to be that. And if he's got champion chase aspirations, he really does want to be winning this race off of 161. I just thought that you could. I mean, you start looking back through the form, and maybe you can pick holes in his novice chase form a little bit. And so I looked elsewhere, and the Frero Bamboo form that Steve came down, and I just came down with before midnight. I think he's 17 or 18.0 win and place. He won this race last year off £2 lower. He ran okay the other day. He's beat 11 lengths. I think he's got an £8 swing with Time White. I mean, not so much more with Frero Bamboo, but the only worry is he is a horse that goes well fresh, so he might not come forward very much for the run. But I just thought he was sort of nailed on to give his run in, and at the prices, like I say, there's a place angle with him as well.
Okay, that's the last race we're previewing at Ascot. We come to the 3:35 at Haydock. Last up, 3 mile, 1 furlong handicap chase. 4 different horses going up here. Houston, Texas is 5.0, 7.0 for Fontaine Collonges. Lord de Benny, 7.0. Musical Sleeve at 8.0. Good Boy Bobby, 9. Trucker's Lodge is the same, as is the Big Breakaway. And then we get into slightly bigger prices. See, this is a nice competitive open enough race. And Trevor Clark says, my bet of the day, as long as the going is heavy at Haydock, Fontaine Collonges in the 340. Now the 335 at Haydock. This is. Any worry about the Venetia Williams yet? Well, she just hasn't had a winner for a bit, has she? It's not. Is it not her time of year, Charlie? Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, no, but I mean, there's every chance that after Saturday we could be saying that Venetia Williams is bang in form, you know.
Yeah.
But I do agree with you, as in it was certainly a factor for me with Frero Bamboo at Ascot and the likes of this horse that I would just like to see her bang in a couple of winners. I think she's 0 from 24 or something over the last couple of weeks, but it's going to happen anytime soon, and why not be Saturday? But I stayed away from him and went with Houston, Texas. Just kept it simple, really. He's won his last 3. I mean, Nicky Richards was talking about either chases and things like that for him, but he has to have bottomless ground. And he's just a tenacious horse, strong traveller, doesn't seem to win too far and keeps shifting up the handicap in small steps. Looks really progressive as an 8-year-old. And Sean Quinlan, again, is a rider I've got massive respect for. And the Nicky Richards team are in good form. And I just thought of 10-5 as well. I know what Steve's saying about better off backing horses with big weights and handicaps, class horses, but this is going to be a horse on the up, and it's no harm also having 10-5 over 3.25 miles and what could potentially be heavy ground around Haydock.
Okay, Steve.
Oh, I didn't even mute myself that time. Good Boy Bobby. I thought this was a really tricky race. I wanted to try my old mate Lord de Menil, but I just don't think this is far enough for him these days, even though it's going to be testing ground. And that 3.5 mile race is more his kind of thing at Haydock. So Good Boy Bobby for me, a top weight, but class will out. And I thought he lost his way over fences a few years ago and then went over hurdles for a bit. And last season, back over fences, he was very good early in the part of the season when he was winning at Wetherby, when he beat Lord de Menil, funny enough. And he was second to I Right at in the rehearsal chase at Newcastle. He stays very well. And then later in the season, he ran in the Grand National and he ran around Kempton in that 3 mile handicap in February, which it wouldn't be his thing anyway. And I didn't think that was a bad run last time when he was midfield at Ascot. And I thought that might just put the edge on him and it wouldn't probably been his sort of ground. So Good Boy Bobby in a tricky old race, I thought.
I've gone with Lord de Menil on a line through Good Boy Bobby and their form together. Based on the Wetherby run. I know that was a while ago. I hope it's testing for Lord de Menil because you're right, he probably does want further. But at least he's had a spin round. He should be race fit, and 7.0, I'm going to be win and place. Dan.
Yeah, this is a really good race, I think. You've got some of the old guard, like you already mentioned, Good Boy Bobby, Lord de Menil, the young improvers at Charlie's mentioned, Houston, Texas, Fontaine Kalong to be another. The horse I'm going with, Musical Slave, isn't really either, strangely. Like, he only really got his act together at the back end of last year. Before that, he'd been a rather frustrating character. But the form of last year's runs towards the end of the season is pretty damn good. Like, we know he was second to Hewick at Sandown, head of Kitty's Light, who'd been absolutely prime for that run. Before that, he beat last year's Tommy Whittle winner, which is a pretty good effort as well. And his record fresh is an encouraging sign as well. Like, he was only beaten 3 lengths 2 seasons ago over an inadequate trip, and jumping errors cost him that day off of today's mark. And then last year, he was third to Win My Wings, who I think was running off 129 at Exeter. And then there was a next time out winner in second as well. And he was hampered at the third last by a faller as well. He's gone well on heavy ground in the past. He was third over 2.5 here in a good race. He was second to Sam's Adventure, who runs earlier in the card. He went on to win the Tommy Whittle and the Ida next season. So that form worked out really well. You've got to take fitness on trust with him, but I say he goes well fresh. He's been entered up multiple times this season and not taken his chance. I think he's one who still hasn't necessarily hit his ceiling in these staying handicap chases. Now he's finally got his act together.
Lord de Menil, Houston, Texas, Good Boy Bobby, and Musical Slave for Dan in that 3:35, 3 mile and a furlong handicap chase. Any other bets, chaps? Not for me. Dan, straight back at you.
Yeah, so I think between us, we're now backing every single Venetia Williams trained horse that's running at Haydock and Ascot. So we need to kind of hope she's up and running. But Achille is the old boy. He's 12 years old now. But I say we're all kind of assuming it's going to be a real specialist test at Haydock. He's exactly that. And this race has been won by Perfect Candidate, who was a 12-year-old and then won it as a 13-year-old. So his age isn't really a concern to me. He started last season off 141. He ran well in the Beach on his seasonal reappearance. Obviously, that being a unique test. He finished 4th in a Welsh National, and he was going really well in the Midlands National in his final start, and then the stirrup snapped. And yet he's been dropped for that down to a mark of 128 now. So 13 pounds in the season, despite running respectably on the majority of his starts. He's got a great record fresh. His last 3 runs after a long break were second in Cheltenham Handicap at November meeting off 133, second in the Classic Chase 134, and 5th in a Beecher. It's been a long time since he's had these kind of conditions. He's dropping in class as well today. Obviously, the stable form is a concern, but considering I think this is going to be a pretty specialist test, I think he's the one most equipped to deal with it. And I imagine he'll be a fair price as well, given his age.
That is Achille in the 12.40 at Haydock. You got one in the 12.10, Steve, and another at Ascot.
Do you know, I nearly went for Achille. I think he's got a really good chance. So I sort of agree with that. There was a few in there that tempted me, but I'm going with Glimpse of Gala in the 1:30 at Ascot, who's trained by Charlie Longston and ridden by a young jockey called Bradley Roberts, who gets on very well with this horse. And this horse is an dour stayer, and there's quite a few horses that like to get on with it, even though there's 6 runners. and Glimpse of Gala should be able to have that test of stamina that he likes, or she likes rather, because it's a men's race. And so Glimpse of Gala there. And in the 12:10 at Haydock, which is a listed novices hurdle, another trainer who's got her horses in brilliant form is Lucinda Russell. And Snake Roll absolutely bolted up at Kelso on first hurdle start. And I thought that horse had an excellent chance against some other last time out winners from decent stables. But Snake Roll just might be able to, in the ground, just grind away and outstay them, just be too strong.
2 for Steve. Charlie, you've got one who I take it you've worked with, Half the Freedom, who's got a couple of entries.
Yeah, we sold him to John Joe O'Neill actually unraced before he ran. He might not be declared, but he's in at Uttoxeter and Exeter on Sunday. He's been a bit disappointing, but he sort of showed a bit of signs of life. Finished 4th at Chepstow last campaign, and then was 2nd at Worcester to a horse of Ben Paulins that subsequently was narrowly beaten at Uttoxeter. And he was over 2 mile. He made heavy weather a bit. He still looked very green and babyish. John Joe O'Neill gave him a really good ride. And there was a moment jumping the last, he looked like he still might win. And I'd say from being off the bridle for such a long way, just took its toll. He stepped up 1/2 mile in trip. These 2 entries, Exeter and Uttoxeter, a bit of slower ground won't hurt him. And he could just be the sort of horse that when the penny drops, that he might be off a pretty workable mark. I think he's rated in the 80s. So, yeah, if he's declared, he'd definitely be of interest for me.
Okay, that's Half the Freedom for John Joe O'Neill, entered on Sunday at Exeter and Uttoxeter. Best lays, anybody? We've got just Dan and I, hitman-wise, if running at Haydock, Dan. I've copied you on that one, but I just think he's a bit of a take-on job given the price he is, given that he doesn't exactly win for fun.
Well, yeah, I mean, just look at his last 6 starts. In running, he's been beaten at 1.28, 1.1, 2, 2.46, 1.83 and 1.17. So, I mean, it tells its own story, really. Look, and again, we've all picked a different horse in opposition to him. I think, again, he's going to travel well. I'd look in running as well. I think he'll probably trade shorter than his SP, and he's one to, in a battle, to pretty much always take on until he proves otherwise.
That's an interesting shout. It might, and I'll probably follow you there. I'll probably have a look what he is, particularly if he's jumping well early, and expect him to shorten up a good bit, and then maybe lay him off the back of that if he shortens up a bit, because it's about what he does or doesn't do at the back end of the race. You may have seen the banner going along there to if you're liking our content, to subscribe. If you're liking our content as well, the best way to support the podcast is by having a Matchbook account. And if you don't have one, then you may as well open one up and have a go at something, a bet you particularly fancy, up to £30. And if it doesn't win, you get your money back as a free bet. It's a £30 welcome offer. It is money back as a free bet if your first bet loses, up to £30. You've got to use the bonus code INSIGHTS30, INSIGHTS30, to take advantage of that. It is for new customers only, but well worth taking advantage of. And you'll most likely be getting better odds with the nature of the Matchbook Exchange anyway, as we point out to you each and every week. So well worth taking advantage of. Okay, we've got a few best bets coming in from people, and Simon O'Neill says State Man best bet. I quite like that in the Morgiana, if rocking up, of course. He's a very interesting horse, I think, in what's a deep champion hurdle division this year, but I think he could be a bit of a monster. Best bets. I'm with Edward Stone, 3.15 at Ascot for the reasons I made earlier. Charlie, your best bet.
Houston, Texas, in the 3:35 at Haydock, just a young slogger on the up.
And Dan, your best bet.
Good risk at all in the 2:25 at Haydock, the Stairs Handicap Hurdle. I think he's got the perfect profile for the race. Most horses that end up winning this have had a run under their belt this season, and he looked very impressive at Carlisle. £6 ride shouldn't stop him, and I think he will handle conditions better than pretty much anything else in the race.
And Steve, you agree?
Yeah, he's my best bet as well, which there's not a huge amount of races to choose from given the size of the fields, but good risk at all. Like Dan said, I think he's got an excellent chance going up in distance, and very progressive horse from an informed stable.
producer informs me that Willie Mullins has said all 6 are going to run in the Morgiana of his. So there you are. Interesting stuff. All right, we're done. Dan, thank you very much. Steve, thank you. Charlie, thank you. Do subscribe away if you like our content. You can subscribe for free. Makes it easier to watch each and every podcast that goes up. And head to insights.matchbook.com for a recap of all our best bets. Steve, you're not on mute.
Well, it is Flown the most hyped Supreme winner, but also a couple of years before there, Forest Sun, who I'm loath to say because I did like Forest Sun. He ran in the Morley Street colours, trained by Toby Boulding, but he didn't do a huge amount after he won the Supreme. But Flown was the biggest of the hype horse. Faster time than the champion hurdle winner at 92, which I can't even remember what it was. Probably Granville again, was it? Something like that?
Are you just talking to yourself, Steve?
92 was Royal Gate, the old ex Ascot Gold Cup winner.
That's it from Dan, Charlie, and I. We can leave you now with Steve Jones, who's going to have an hour-long monologue talking about hype horses.
all the horses from my youth. Yes.